Gravity was not a constant. It was a hammer. And right now, it was trying to crush Ghaan'thak into the bedrock of a strange world. The silent fang died screaming. The dimensional shear had torn the vessel's port stabilizers apart in a spray of sparks and vented coolant, sending the ship tumbling through the troposphere of the target planet. The blooded warrior did not panic. Panic was for the unblooded, the soft meat. He slammed his fist onto the manual release of his harness as the horizon spun. Black earth, starless sky, black earth again, and braced his legs against the bulkhead. The impact felt like the fist of a queen mother. Metal shrieked, buckling under the kinetic assault, and the world went white with the heat of friction and sudden deceleration. Silence followed the violence, heavy and absolute. Ghaan'thak tasted copper and his own glowing green blood. A jagged strut of the cockpit had sheared off, slicing through the armor, plating at his ribs, biting deep into the flesh. He let out a guttural roar, more frustration than pain, and ripped the metal free. Neon green bioluminescence splattered the ruined deck. He triggered his biomask, the HUD flickering with static before stabilizing into the familiar red and orange spectrum of thermal vision. The ship was dead. The reactor core was leaking radiation, a slow pulsing bloom of heat in his vision. He had to move. He engaged the pneumatic seals of the airlock, but the frame was twisted. With a snarl, he drove his boot into the metal, once, twice, until the alloy groaned and gave way. He stumbled out into the cool night air, dropping into the crater his arrival had carved into the soil. The air was rich in nitrogen and oxygen, breathable but tasting of wet rot and dry grass. He scanned the perimeter. Cornstalks, tall and rustling, surrounded the crash site for miles. Primitive agriculture. Isolation. Good hunting ground were he here by choice. But he was not alone. His audio receptors, amplified 1,000 times by the biomask, picked up the crunch of gravel and the whine of an internal combustion engine. A vehicle was approaching. He engaged his cloak. The light-bending field sizzled, struggling against the damage from the crash before snapping into place. He vanished into the shimmer of the heat haze, becoming nothing more than a distortion in the air. A sedan with flashing lights skidded to a halt at the rim of the crater. A human male stepped out, clad in a tan uniform, holding a primitive projectile weapon. A law enforcer. Ghaan'thak watched from the lip of the crater, his optical zoom focusing on the prey's heart rate. Elevated. Fear scent was pungent. The human spoke into a radio, voice trembling, but Ghaan'thak ignored the babble. This one was armed, technically prey but weak, unworthy of the wrist blade. Then the wind changed, carrying the scent of old blood and grave dirt. Movement in the corn, not the law enforcer. Something else. Ghaan'thak turned his head, the servo motors in his mask whirring softly. 7 heat signatures emerged from the stalks, but they were wrong. In his thermal vision, they were dull, room-temperature, indistinct shapes against the cool night air. They possessed no core body heat, yet they moved with predatory speed, flanking the lawman. They looked human, but their physiology mocked the laws of thermodynamics. "Hey! You there!" the sheriff shouted, shining a beam of light at the newcomers. "State your business." The lead figure, a female with matted hair, didn't speak. She lunged. The speed was shocking, faster than a standard human, faster even than some of the lesser game beasts on Yautja Prime. She covered the 20 feet in a blur, slamming into the sheriff with enough force to shatter ribs. The man didn't even have time to scream before she tore his throat out with her teeth. Ghaan'thak tilted his head. The predators fed on the blood, growling like starving hounds. They were feral, undisciplined, and sloppy. But they were strong. The leader, the female, lifted her head from the ruin of the sheriff's neck. Blood slicked her chin. She looked toward the crater, sniffing the air. "Something else is here," she hissed. Her voice was grinding glass. "Smells like ozone and lizard. Aliens? Marisol?" One of the males laughed, wiping blood from his jacket. "Maybe it's a buffet." Ghaan'thak felt the familiar thrum of the hunt awaken in his chest, overriding the pain in his side. These creatures were not human. They were killers. They hunted in a pack. They were worthy. He deactivated his cloak. The shimmer dropped, revealing 7 feet of armored muscle, dreadlocks swaying like serpents, and the dull sheen of the biomask reflecting the burning wreckage of his ship. He extended his right arm, and the twin serrated wrist blades snapped out with a metallic shing that echoed in the silence. The vampires froze. Marisol's eyes widened, and then her face contorted, rows of needle teeth descending from her gums. "Fresh meat!" She shrieked. They rushed him. Ghaan'thak did not retreat. He stepped into the charge. The first attacker, a male in a torn flannel shirt, leaped for his throat. The Yautja sidestepped with fluid grace, driving his elbow into the creature's chest. The impact should have collapsed the sternum and stopped the heart. Instead, the creature merely grunted, absorbing the blow that would have crippled a xenomorph drone. Resilient. Ghaan'thak spun, his wrist blades flashing in a lethal arc. The steel bit through the vampire's neck, severing the head cleanly. The body dropped, twitching. No heat bloomed from the blood spray. It was cold. Cold blood, Ghaan'thak noted. Targeting correction required. 3 more were on him instantly. Claws raked against his armor, finding purchase on the unarmored mesh at his thighs. He roared, grabbing one attacker by the skull and slamming him into the crater wall. He brought his combistic to bear, the spear telescoping out to full length. He impaled the second attacker, lifting the hissing creature into the air, but it did not die. It clawed at the spear shaft, screeching, trying to pull itself closer to bite him. Vital organs non-critical, the Yautja analyzed. Decapitation or massive trauma required. He hurled the impaled vampire into the burning wreckage of his ship. The creature ignited, screaming as the flames consumed it. Fire worked. Marisol was the last to commit. She circled him, fast and low. "What the hell are you?" she spat. Ghaan'thak answered with the low, clicking growl of his people. He tapped a sequence into his wrist gauntlet, shifting his vision spectrum to ultraviolet. The vampires lit up like beacons now, their necrotic aura unmistakable. He raised the plasma caster mounted on his shoulder. The 3-dot laser designator locked onto Marisol's forehead. She moved just as he fired. The bolt of superheated plasma vaporized the cornstalks behind her, turning the night into day for a split second. She was fast. Too fast for the auto-tracker at this range. This would be a blade kill. As Honor demanded, he dropped the combistic and spread his arms, inviting the attack. Marisol took the bait, launching herself at him with a shriek of fury. Ghaan'thak caught her mid-air, his hands closing around her throat. She thrashed, her claws digging deep into his shoulder, drawing glowing green blood. He felt the coldness of her flesh, the unnatural strength in her skeletal frame. She was strong, but he was a blooded warrior of the elite clan. He tightened his grip, crushing her windpipe, then ripped downward with his free hand, driving his wrist blades into her chest and tearing upward. She gasped, her eyes going wide as he hurled her broken form to the ground. Before she could rise, he stomped on her chest, pinning her, and with a swift, reverent motion, severed her head. Silence returned to the cornfield, save for the crackle of the burning ship. Ghaan'thak stood amidst the carnage. 7 bodies. 7 skulls. He lifted Marisol's head, inspecting it. The bone structure was human, but the teeth were monstrous. There was no honor in the blood. It was cold, stagnant. He clipped the trophy to his belt nonetheless, a reminder that on this world, the dead did not stay dead. He looked down at his own wounds. The vampire claws had been sharp. He was losing fluid. He needed to cauterize the wound and secure the crash site. But as he turned back to the silent fang, his audio receptors picked up a new frequency. High-band radio waves. Police chatter. Federal channels. The hunt had been loud. The indigenous population was awakening. 500 miles east, the asphalt of Interstate 80 hummed beneath the tires of a 1967 Chevrolet Impala. The engine's rumble was a low, comforting baritone against the static of the radio. Dean Winchester drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, humming along to the fading chords of a Bachman-Turner overdrive track, while the Midwestern landscape blurred into a gray smear of rain and twilight outside the passenger window. The car smelled of old leather, gun oil, and fast food grease, the perfume of the hunter's life. "You've been staring at that laptop for 3 hours, Sammy," Dean said, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "You're gonna burn a hole in your retina. Tell me we got a job. Or tell me where the nearest decent burger is." Sam Winchester didn't look up. His face was bathed in the harsh blue light of the screen, brows furrowed in that familiar expression of concern and confusion. He tapped a key, scrolling down a police blotter report. "I think we have something. Harrow Falls, Nebraska. About 4 hours out." "Nebraska," Dean groaned. "Corn. Cows. More corn. What is it? Poltergeist in a silo?" "Massacre," Sam corrected, his voice dropping an octave. "State troopers found the local sheriff and 6 unidentified John Does in a cornfield about an hour ago. Or rather, pieces of them." Dean's interest sharpened, the boredom evaporating. "Pieces? Torn apart," Sam read, adjusting the laptop on his knees. "Report says the sheriff was mauled. Blunt force trauma. Throat ripped out. But the other 6... Dean, the coroner on site says the bodies were decapitated. Cleanly. And get this, the heads are missing. Trophy hunter," Dean muttered, his grip on the wheel tightening. "Werewolves usually take the hearts. Vamps just drain them. Maybe a shapeshifter trying to hide ID? It gets weirder," Sam continued. The coroner noted that the 6 unidentified bodies had advanced rigor and 0 body heat at the time of discovery. He thinks they were dead before they were decapitated. But the field is torn up like a war zone. Scorch marks, shattered earth. Dean glanced at his brother. "So we got a monster killing dead bodies? That makes no sense. Unless the dead bodies were walking," Sam said, closing the laptop. "Vampires. A nest, maybe, and something ganked a whole nest and took the heads as souvenirs." Dean whistled low. "That's a new one. Sounds like a cleaner. Or something big moving through." Dean spun the wheel, guiding the black muscle car across the median and onto the exit ramp for the westbound lane. The engine roared as he floored it. "All right. Harrow Falls. Let's go see what eats the things that eat people." Back in the cornfield, the smell of ozone and cooked meat was overpowering. Ghaan'thak knelt in the shadow of his burning ship, the heat of the wreckage warring with the chill of the Nebraska night. The adrenaline of the kill had faded, leaving only the cold, sharp clarity of pain. The vampire's claws had raked deep across his left pectoral and shoulder, shredding the mesh undersuit and carving furrows into his reptilian hide. The wound was weeping glowing green bioluminescence, a beacon in the dark. He opened the medical kit on his belt. With practiced stoic movements, he mixed the blue solvent and the bonding agent. The paste hissed as it touched the air. He didn't hesitate. He smeared the compound directly into the open gashes. The pain was absolute. It was a white-hot spike driving into his nervous system, a sensation so intense it bypassed screaming and went straight to shock. Ghaan'thak threw his head back, his mandibles flaring wide, a silent, vibrating roar shaking his chest. His vision grayed out, then snapped back into hyperfocus. Smoke curled from the wound as the flesh fused and cauterized instantly. He panted, his breath fogging in the cold air, forcing his heart rate to stabilize. Pain is data. Pain is life. He stood, testing the movement of his arm. Stiff, but functional. He turned his attention to the silent fang. The vessel was a total loss. The FTL drive was fused slag. The dimensional jump had scrambled the navigation computer beyond repair. He could not leave this rock. Not yet. He moved to the cockpit, ripping the command console free to access the subsystems. He retrieved his spare breathing masks, a satchel of ration pellets, and the localized disruption beacon, the device that would scramble human radar and communications in a tighter radius. Finally, he accessed the self-destruct protocol on his wrist gauntlet. He looked at the ship. Yautja technology could not be left for primitives to scavenge. He keyed the sequence for a remote detonation delay. He would not blow it yet. The explosion would draw too many eyes, but he rigged the core to melt down if tampered with. He sensed the vibration of the earth before he heard it. Sirens. Many of them. The police were swarming. Ghaan'thak engaged his cloak again. The field sputtered, static rippling across his form like oil on water. It was damaged, holding only 80% integrity. If he moved too fast, he would shimmer. He would have to be a ghost. He grabbed the spine of Marisol, the skull rattling against his belt, and leaped. With powerful hydraulic-like strength, he cleared the crater's edge, landing silently in the corn. He began to run, not away from the town, but toward the industrial silhouettes he had seen on his descent. The high ground, the steel maze, the hunting blind. He would find a place to rest. He would study this prey that walked with cold blood, and when the ones who hunted the cold bloods arrived, he would test them too. The floodlights from the state trooper cruisers cut harsh, white wedges into the Nebraska darkness, illuminating the cornfield like a crime scene stage. The air was thick with the copper tang of blood and the lingering, acrid scent of something that smelled like ozone and burnt hair. Sam and Dean Winchester ducked under the yellow police tape, flashing badges that identified them as FBI agents Page and Plant. The deputy on guard, a young man who looked like he was about to vomit, waved them through without a second glance. The massacre had spooked the locals deep. Jesus, Dean muttered, his boots crunching on the scorched earth. He shined his flashlight on the nearest body, or what was left of it. You weren't kidding about the torn-apart bit. Sam was already crouching beside the corpse of the flannel-shirted vampire Ghaan'thak had decapitated. He pulled a pair of latex gloves from his jacket pocket and snapped them on. Dean, look at the hands. Retractable claws. Dental records will show fangs. These were vamps. Okay, so a nest gets taken out, Dean said, panning his light across the devastating blast radius in the corn. But by what? Look at this scorch mark, Sammy. It's vitrified the soil. Turned the dirt to glass. Dragons don't do that. Rawhead don't do that. Sam examined the neck of the corpse. He frowned, leaning closer. The cauterization, it's perfect. The heat required to seal the vessels instantly like this, it would have to be thousands of degrees. And the cut? Monofilament or something sharper than any knife I've ever seen. It sliced through the vertebrae like butter. Dean walked toward the center of the crater, where the heat still radiated from the buried, smoldering wreckage of the silent fang. And then there's the meteor that started all this. You think it's a ship? Maybe, Sam said, standing up and looking around the dark perimeter. But whatever came out of it isn't here anymore. And it took the heads, Dean. All of them. That's ritualistic. Great. Dean Rack slided his shotgun, checking the chamber loaded with rock salt. So, we got a space vampire ninja? Is that what we're saying? I don't know, Sam admitted, his voice tight. But if it can take out a pack of 7 vamps in under a minute without taking a scratch, we need to find it before it finds the town. 3 miles away, the Harrow Falls meatpacking plant loomed against the night sky like a rotting tooth. Abandoned since the late 80s, it was a cathedral of rust, corrugated iron, and hanging chains. Ghaan'thak crouched on a catwalk 40 feet above the kill floor. It was a good vantage point. The building was a maze of steel and shadow, offering high ground and multiple egress routes. He had spent the last hour tending to his gear. The biomask sat on his knee as he ran a diagnostic on the lens array. The crash had misaligned the thermal tracking. He recalibrated it manually, his clawed fingers moving with delicate precision. He felt unsettled. The trophy at his belt, the skull of the female pack leader, was cleaned, but the memory of the kill bothered him. The cold blood, the lack of fear. This planet was ecologically wrong. He snapped the mask back onto his face. The HUD cycled. Environmental scan complete. No biological threats detected. Then the temperature dropped. It wasn't a subtle shift. The ambient temperature in the slaughterhouse plummeted 20 degrees in 3 seconds. Ghaan'thak's thermal vision flared blue. He stood, mandibles clicking, scanning the room. Anomaly detected. On the floor below, near the rusted stunning chutes, the air shimmered. But not like his cloak. This was a coalescence of sorrow and rage. A figure formed, a human female, dressed in the rags of a slaughterhouse apron, her neck twisted at an impossible angle. Ghaan'thak zoomed in. Target analysis, 0 body heat, 0 heartbeat, 0 mass. Yet, he could see her. The figure looked up at him. Her eyes were black pits. She opened her mouth and a sound came out that didn't register on his audio translators as speech. It was just a frequency of pure pain. The hooks on the chains around her began to swing violently, clashing together with the sound of tolling bells. Ghaan'thak did not hesitate. A threat was a threat. He activated his shoulder cannon. The tri-laser locked onto her chest. He fired. The plasma bolt screamed through the air, a sphere of blue sun. It struck the woman squarely in the chest and passed straight through her, exploding against the concrete wall behind in a shower of molten sparks. The woman didn't flinch. She floated upward, rising toward the catwalk. Error, the HUD flashed. Target lock failure. Ghaan'thak growled. A hologram? A trick of the light? He drew his combistic, extending it to full length. If energy failed, steel would suffice. He waited until she was within striking distance and lunged, a thrust powerful enough to pierce tank armor. The spear tip passed through her torso as if she were smoke. There was no resistance, no impact. He stumbled forward with the momentum, passing through her. An icy shockwave hit his system, shorting out his biomask's display for a second. It felt like walking through a frozen waterfall. He spun around, confused. This was impossible. Matter was matter. If it could be seen, it could be killed. The woman raised a hand. Suddenly, Ghaan'thak was lifted off his feet. An invisible force, kinetic energy without a source, slammed him backward into the iron railing. The metal groaned under his weight. He roared, slashing blindly with his wrist blades. They cut nothing but air. Telekinetic capabilities. Intangible physiology. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. He was a master of the hunt. He knew every biology in the sector. But this? How do you hunt a memory? How do you kill a shadow? The ghost screamed again, and a heavy iron meat hook swung from the ceiling, propelled by her will. It caught Ghaan'thak in the shoulder, the same shoulder the vampire had mauled. He bellowed in pain, green blood spraying. This was not a fight. This was an execution. Honor demanded he stand his ground, but logic demanded survival. His weapons were useless here. He triggered a flashbang grenade from his belt and dropped it at his feet. The blinding magnesium flare erupted, filling the warehouse with white light. Using the distraction, Ghaan'thak leaped over the railing, crashing to the floor below. He scrambled for the exit, his movements losing their predatory grace, replaced by the frantic urgency of prey. He burst out into the night air, leaving the cold, mocking laughter of the spirit behind him. He ran until the slaughterhouse was a dark silhouette behind him. He stopped in a grove of trees, chest heaving, clutching his shoulder. His code was broken. His weapons were lies. What is this place? Sam slammed the trunk of the Impala shut, the metallic thud echoing off the rusted corrugated siding of the Harrow Falls meat-packing plant. The rain had started to fall in earnest, a cold, miserable drizzle that turned the gravel lot into a slick of mud and oil. "Emph is screaming, Dean," Sam said, holding up the reader. The needle was buried in the red, whining a high-pitched, frantic tone. Whatever killed those vamps might have moved on, but there's something angry still inside. History records show a strikebreaker named Eliza Combe fell into the grinding gears back in '54. They never found all of her. "Great," Dean muttered, racking his shotgun. "So we got a ghost in a meat grinder, and a predator in the cornfield." Just another Tuesday. He pulled a flashlight from his jacket, the beam cutting through the gloom. "Let's salt and burn Eliza, clear the board, and then hunt the spaceman. You got the iron?" Sam hefted a rusted tire iron in one hand and a canister of salt in the other. "Yeah, let's make it quick." From the canopy of a dead oak tree overlooking the lot, Ghaan'thak watched. He was in pain. The hook wound in his shoulder throbbed with a dull, sickening rhythm, and his biomask was still cycling through diagnostic errors, struggling to filter the spectral static of this cursed place. He had engaged his cloak, but he kept his movements minimal to prevent the shimmer. He expected the two humans to die. He had analyzed the ghost entity. It was immune to plasma. These soft skins, armed only with primitive combustion, propelled projectile weapons and blunt tools, were walking into a tomb. He zoomed his optical lens on the shorter one, Dean. The human moved with a loose, confident gait that Ghaan'thak recognized. It was the walk of a veteran hunter, not an apex predator by biology, but by survival. The humans kicked the side door open and entered the darkness. Ghaan'thak did not intervene. He waited to witness their slaughter. Inside, the slaughterhouse was a freezer. The breath of the hunters misted in the air. "Eliza!" Dean shouted, his voice echoing through the vast, hook-hung chamber. "Come on out, sweetheart. We know you're cranky." The temperature plummeted. Ghaan'thak, watching through a skylight, saw the thermal blue shift instantly. The entity materialized from the floor, screaming, the same sonic assault that had driven the Yautja back. She flew at Dean, her spectral hands claws of ice. Ghaan'thak tensed. Now, they die. Dean didn't flinch. He raised the shotgun and fired. The impact was not thermal. It was kinetic dispersion. The entity exploded into a cloud of white mist, her scream cut short. Ghaan'thak's mandibles clicked in shock. Projectile analysis. Rock salt. Crystalline structure disrupts the energy matrix. The ghost reformed seconds later, angrier, flickering behind Sam. She grabbed Sam by the throat. lifting the large human off the ground. Sam choked, dropping his flashlight, but he swung the tire iron backward with a desperate, practiced arc. The iron connected with the ghost's midsection. Instead of passing through, the metal sizzled, burning the spirit like a brand. She shrieked, dropping Sam and recoiling, smoke rising from her ectoplasmic form. Ferrous metal, Ghaan'thak recorded, his mind racing. Iron. It burns them. The chute, Sam. The wall behind the grinder. Dean yelled, firing another salt round to keep the spirit at bay. Sam scrambled to a bricked-up section of the wall, smashing it with a sledgehammer he'd pulled from his bag. Behind the bricks lay old gnawed bones wrapped in rotting cloth. Dean sprayed the spirit with rock salt again, buying time, while Sam doused the bones in lighter fluid and struck a flare. Adios, Witch Dean panted. Sam dropped the flare. The bones ignited. A roar of fire filled the alcove. Above, the ghost of Eliza Combe threw her head back, engulfed in phantom flames that mirrored the real ones. She burned away, layer by layer, until nothing remained but the smell of sulfur and silence. Ghaan'thak stared from his perch. The threat was gone, erased. The humans had not used superior strength. They had not used advanced energy weapons. They had used knowledge. They understood the physics of the soul. Salt to disperse. Iron to wound. Fire to unmake. The Yautja looked at his wrist blades. They were complex alloys, space-age polymers and tempered steel. Useless against the spirits, but there was scrap metal everywhere in this yard, rusted iron. He looked back down at the Winchesters. They were catching their breath, wiping grime from their faces. "That's one down," Sam said, coughing. "Now about the other thing." Dean walked to the center of the room, looking up. He scanned the catwalks, the ceiling, the skylight. His gaze swept over Ghaan'thak's position. The Yautja froze, his cloak active, blending with the rain-slicked roof. Dean's eyes narrowed. He didn't see the alien, but he sensed the intent. The instinct of one hunter recognizing another. "Sammy," Dean said quietly, not lowering his shotgun. "We're not alone." Ghaan'thak slowly withdrew from the skylight. He had seen enough. The ghosts were not gods. They were puzzles, and these humans held the key. He would not kill them yet. They were teaching him how to survive this world. But he needed iron. And he needed to hunt. The Miller Foundry was a graveyard of American industry, and Ghaan'thak was its new gravedigger. He stood before the open maw of a gas-fed kiln, the heat rippling against his bare chest. The pain of his wounds was a distant, throbbing dullness, suppressed by his battle focus. On the anvil before him lay a leaf spring salvaged from a rusted truck. He held a heavy sledgehammer, his muscles coiling and releasing with hydraulic precision. Sparks showered his scales. He wasn't just shaping metal, he was integrating the physics of this cursed dimension into his arsenal. The ghosts burned at the touch of cold iron. Therefore, he would become iron. He folded the metal, hammering it into a crude, jagged blade designed to mount over his existing wrist gauntlet. He quenched the blade in a barrel of rainwater. Steam hissed, screaming into the rafters. He turned to his net gun. He stripped the propellant cartridges, packing them with rock salt he had crushed from industrial de-icing bags found in the supply closet. Adaptation complete. He snapped the iron blade onto his left wrist. It was ugly, heavy and pitted, but it carried the weight of this world's laws. He raised it, testing the balance. The heavy steel doors of the foundry blew inward, torn from their hinges by a concussive blast. Ghaan'thak spun, roaring, his thermal vision flaring. Two figures stood in the smoke, the Winchesters. "There," Dean yelled, leveling a sawed-off shotgun. "Ugly son of a gun at 12 o'clock. There was no hesitation, no parley. These humans were hunters, and they had tracked him to his den. Dean fired. The rock-salt round hit Ghaan'thak in the chest. It didn't penetrate his pectoral armor, but the impact staggered him, the salt dust blinding his biomask senses for a microsecond. Ghaan'thak snarled, ripping the mask off. He didn't need thermal to kill these soft skins. He needed speed. He launched himself over the anvil, clearing 20 feet in a single bound. Sam. Left. Dean shouted, racking the slide. Sam moved with practiced fluidity, flanking wide, holding a Taurus PT-92. He double-tapped, 2 rounds to the Yautja's unarmored midsection. The bullets were carved with devil's traps, but against alien biology they were just lead. They punched into Ghaan'thak's flesh. Green blood sprayed. Ghaan'thak hit the ground rolling and came up with his cambistic extended. He swept the spear low. Sam jumped, but the haft caught his shin, sweeping his legs out from under him. Sam hit the concrete hard. Ghaan'thak raised the spear to pin the human to the floor. A machete slammed into Ghaan'thak's shoulder plate. Dean had closed the distance, swinging a heavy blade. The steel sparked off the Yautja alloy, but the force turned the alien strike aside. "Get off him." Dean grunted, swinging again. Ghaan'thak backhanded Dean. It was a casual blow, but with the weight of a creature that wrestled xenomorphs. Dean flew backward, smashing into a stack of pallets. Ghaan'thak towered over them, mandibles clicking in fury. They were fast. They were aggressive. But they were meat. He raised his new iron wrist blade. He would take the tall one's skull first. So violent, a voice echoed from the catwalks. "I love it." Ghaan'thak froze. The Winchesters froze. Vorathael, the Duke of Hell, leaned over the railing 30 feet above, slow clapping. The hunter and the Winchesters, tearing each other apart. It's poetic, really, but I'm on a schedule. The Duke snapped his fingers. From the shadows of the foundry floor, the darkness coalesced into solid forms. Dozens of them. Not just demons. Hellhounds. Invisible to human eyes, but Ghaan'thak's natural vision caught the shimmer of their displacement. "Kill them all," Vorathael commanded. "Bring me the alien's tech. Burn the rest." The invisible hounds charged. Ghaan'thak didn't look at the Winchesters. He didn't offer a truce. He assessed the threat matrix. Hellhounds. Immediate lethality. Winchesters. Demon. Primary target. The trophy. He roared and activated his plasma caster, targeting the shimmer of the lead hound. The bolt of blue sun vaporized the beast mid-leap. Dean. "Glasses." Sam yelled, scrambling for his bag to retrieve the spectacles that allowed them to see the hounds. "I'm a little busy," Dean shouted, firing blindly at a growl to his left. Ghaan'thak moved. He wasn't protecting the humans. He was using them as bait. As a hound leaped for Dean's throat, Ghaan'thak intercepted it, not to save Dean, but to kill the beast. He impaled the hound on his cambistic green ichor, mixing with black sludge. He shoved the dying beast onto Dean, pinning the human under the carcass, and vaulted off the pile to reach the catwalk. He wanted the Duke. Rude. Vorathael sneered. He flicked his hand. Ghaan'thak was slammed mid-air by a telekinetic blast, hurled back down to the foundry floor. He landed in a crouch, his plasma caster smoking. The foundry was swarming. Demons in meat suits were pouring through the breach. Ghaan'thak looked at the exit. Then he looked at the Winchesters, who were back to back, fighting a losing battle against 3 hounds. Let the prey thin the herd. Ghaan'thak triggered a flashbang grenade and dropped it. White light blinded the room. The hellhounds yelped, disoriented. The Winchesters covered their eyes. When the light faded, Ghaan'thak was gone. He had smashed through the rear corrugated wall, escaping into the rain. He would not die in a trap. He would circle back, He would stalk them. And when the Duke flushed the Winchesters out, Ghaan'thak would kill the survivor. The foundry was a kill box. "Move, Sammy, move!" Dean screamed, racking his shotgun with one hand while dragging a demon-killing knife through the neck of a hound with the other. The hellhound, visible only through their charmed glasses, dissolved into black slime, but 3 more were circling. Vorathael watched from the gantry, sipping a cocktail he'd manifested from thin air, bored by the struggle. "So much effort," the Duke sighed. "Just die already. It's cleaner." Sam kicked a possessed worker into the path of a lunging hound. The beast tore the demon vessel apart, buying them seconds. The wall, Dean. The hole the alien made. They sprinted for the jagged breach in the corrugated metal, slipping on oil and blood. Dean spun at the threshold, firing his last salt round into the face of a pursuing demon. They tumbled out into the rain-slicked mud of the scrapyard, gasping for air. Behind them, the foundry roared with frustration. They scrambled up the embankment to the Impala, concealed in the tree line. "It left us," Sam panted, throwing his bag into the back seat. "It flashed the room and bailed. It used us as bait." "Yeah, well, I'm going to mount its head on the wall, next to the buck," Dean spat, keying the ignition. The engine roared to life. "But first, we kill the Duke." "Where is he going?" "The energy spike," Sam said, checking his emphy meter. "It's moving. North, toward the silos. He's taking an angel to the ritual site." Dean slammed the car into gear, spraying gravel. "Then let's crash the party." High in the branches of a dead oak, Ghaan'thak watched the human vehicle speed away. He pressed the heated tip of his cambistic against the bullet wound in his abdomen. The flesh sizzled and fused. He did not roar, he barely flinched. The pain was clarity. The humans, the Winchesters, had survived. Good. Analysis: the soft skins are resilient. They are loud. They draw attention. Strategy: use them. He triggered his cloak. The field crackled and whined. The bullet impact had damaged the emitter array, but it held enough to blur his outline against the storm. He leaped from the tree, hitting the ground in a sprint. He could smell the ozone of the angel. He could smell the rot of the Duke. He moved through the cornfields, a shadow cutting through the stalks. He would let the Winchesters breach the perimeter. He would let them absorb the enemy fire. And when the Alpha Vorathael revealed himself, Ghaan'thak would strike. The Harrow Falls grain silo complex was a fortress of rust and concrete. Floodlights swept the perimeter, illuminating a dozen armed figures patrolling the fence line. Demons. The Impala didn't stop at the gate. It smashed through the chain-link fence at 60 miles an hour, Dean leaning out the window firing a Taurus PT-92. "Eat this, you sons of B." The demons opened fire. Bullets sparked off the Impala's chassis. The car drifted, slamming into a parked truck, and the brothers bailed out, rolling into cover behind a stack of pallets. From the roof of the adjacent warehouse, Ghaan'thak observed. Chaos initiated. He activated his plasma caster. He targeted a demon on a heavy machine gun emplacement overlooking the Winchesters. The blue bolt took the demon's head off. Down below, Dean looked up, startled. "Now he's helping us?" Ghaan'thak dropped into the compound. He landed on a demon who was flanking the Winchesters. He didn't save them. He simply crushed the obstacle. He didn't even look at the brothers as he rose, his wrist blade severing the demon's spine. Dean swung his shotgun toward the Yautja. "Hey, Chewbacca!" Ghaan'thak backhanded the air, a gesture of dismissal, and sprinted toward the main silo tower. A demon blocked his path. Ghaan'thak didn't break stride. He threw his smart disc. The razor-edged frisbee decapitated the demon and returned to his hand. Maybe he's going for the angel too, Sam realized. "Dean, if he kills the host body, the angel dies." "Not on my watch," Dean growled. They chased the predator into the dark maw of the silo. Inside, it was a vertical nightmare. Vorathael was already at the top, chanting, the violet light of the ritual pulsing like a heartbeat. The silo was filled with flying demons, smoke form, swirling around the catwalks. Ghaan'thak began his ascent. He didn't use the stairs. He leaped from girder to girder, his claws digging into the concrete. A smoke demon rushed him. Ghaan'thak triggered his net gun, the salt-loaded round. The net exploded in the demon's face, forcing it to materialize in agony. Ghaan'thak kicked the solid form off the ledge. It fell past the Winchesters, screaming, "He's faster than us!" Sam yelled, firing upward at the shadows. "Shoot him!" Dean ordered. Dean raised his pistol and fired 3 rounds at the climbing predator. One bullet sparked off Ghaan'thak's helmet. The Yautja stopped. He looked down, 50 feet below. His thermal eyes narrowed. The prey was biting back. He raised his plasma caster and fired, not at the demons, but at the stairs ahead of the Winchesters. The concrete steps exploded, sending debris raining down on the brothers, cutting off their route. "Stay down, meat," Ghaan'thak thought. He turned back to the summit. Vorathael was waiting. Ghaan'thak breached the roof of the silo like a missile, crashing through the skylight in a shower of glass and rain. He landed in a 3-point crouch, mandibles flaring, heavy rain sizzling against his heated armor. The roof was an altar to the storm. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the central gantry where Vorathael stood. The Duke of Hell had one hand wrapped around the throat of the captive angel, whose wings were scorched shadows on the wet concrete. The violet light of the ritual was fading, replaced by the dull, pulsating ache of a job nearly finished. "You really are a pest," Vorathael shouted over the thunder, turning his black eyes toward the Yautja. "Do you ever just give up?" Ghaan'thak didn't speak. He roared, a sound of pure challenge, and charged. Vorathael flicked his wrist. "Sit." Gravity twisted. Ghaan'thak was slammed face first into the concrete by an invisible hand. The impact cracked his biomask, blinding his HUD. Vorathael laughed, walking closer, dragging the angel by the hair. "I'm going to peel you, Spacer," the Duke sneered. "I'm going to wear your skin to your homeworld." Ghaan'thak struggled against the telekinetic press. His armor groaned, his ribs flared with agony. But he was not a beast. He was a technologist. He wrenched his left arm free, aiming the crude iron gauntlet not at the demon, but at the puddle Vorathael was standing in. He triggered the net gun. The canister, loaded with rock salt and iron filings, didn't deploy a net. It detonated like a shotgun shell. The salt spray hit the water, conducting instantly to the demon's vessel. Vorathael shrieked as the holy caustic burned his connection to the host. The telekinetic hold shattered. Ghaan'thak exploded upward. He didn't use his wrist blades. He used his hands. He grabbed Vorathael by the lapels of his suit and headbutted him. The host's nose shattered. The Duke tried to smoke out, to abandon the body and flee, but Ghaan'thak drove his iron-forged blade into the vessel's shoulder, pinning the essence to the meat. "No," Vorathael gasped, black blood bubbling from his mouth. Ghaan'thak grabbed the Duke's head with one hand and his waist with the other. With a roar that drowned out the thunder, he pulled. The sound was wet and terrible. Ghaan'thak tore the head and spine free from the torso in one fluid, brutal motion. The body collapsed like a wet sack. The demon essence, tethered to the spine, shrieked into the night air, dissipating into nothingness, without a vessel to anchor it. Ghaan'thak stood panting, holding the dripping trophy. He looked at it. A parasite. Unworthy. He tossed the spine over the edge of the silo. He turned his yellow eyes to the angel. The celestial being was slumped against the railing, conscious but weak. He looked at the alien with terrified awe. Ghaan'thak's blood ran hot. This was it. The Seraph. A creature of cosmic power. A trophy that would make him a legend among the clans. He took a step forward, unlimbering his cambistic. The fire door at the edge of the roof burst open. Dean and Sam stumbled out, covered in dust and demon ichor, chests heaving. They had climbed the service ladder on the exterior wall, a suicidal ascent in the rain. They froze. They saw the headless corpse of the Duke. They saw the predator towering over the angel. "Hey!" Dean yelled, leveling his sawed-off shotgun. "Step away from the angel." Ghaan'thak turned his head slowly. He clicked his mandibles. He had cleared the path for them. He had killed the Alpha. And now the scavengers wanted to steal the prize? Insolence. Ghaan'thak pointed his spear at the angel, then tapped his chest. "Mine," he growled. "Like hell," Sam said, rushing forward to put himself between the alien and the angel. He held the demon-killing knife, though he knew it wouldn't kill this creature. Dean racked the slide. "We're not doing this, Chewie. You got the bad guy. Go home." Ghaan'thak analyzed the tactical board. Threat: 2 humans. Kinetic weapons. High resilience. Goal: claim the Seraph skull. Code: anything standing between the hunter and the trophy is prey. The alliance of convenience was over. The hierarchy had to be established. Ghaan'thak discarded his plasma caster. He dropped his net gun. He stripped the heavy armor from his shoulders, letting it clang to the wet concrete. He would not hunt these warriors with tricks. He would break them with his hands. He spread his arms, the twin wrist blades on his right arm snapping out. The iron blade on his left glistened. "Dean," Sam said, his voice trembling slightly. "He's not leaving." "I know, Sammy," Dean whispered, eyes locked on the monster. "Cover the angel." Ghaan'thak roared, a sound that vibrated in the fillings of their teeth, and launched himself. He crossed the roof in a heartbeat. Dean fired both barrels. The buckshot hammered Ghaan'thak's chest, shredding skin and scales, but the Yautja didn't stop. He smashed into Dean, sending the hunter flying across the slick roof. Sam lunged, slashing with the knife. Ghaan'thak caught Sam's arm, twisting it with bone-breaking force, and backhanded him. Sam crumpled near the edge. Ghaan'thak turned back to the angel. The prize was open. But Dean was up. Bloody, bruised, spitting a tooth onto the concrete, Dean Winchester stood up. He pulled the angel blade from his belt, the silver dagger shining in the lightning, and the shotgun in his offhand. "Hey, ugly!" Dean shouted, wiping rain from his eyes. "You want the trophy? Come take it!" Ghaan'thak paused. He looked at the human. Broken ribs. Internal bleeding. Outmatched in every metric. And yet, he stood. Worthy. Ghaan'thak turned away from the angel. The Seraph could wait. The human was the hunt now. The Yautja closed his fists. He prowled forward, circling to the left. Dean circled to the right, shifting the blade to a reverse grip. Thunder crashed directly overhead. The predator sprang. The hunter struck. They collided in the dark, a tangle of silver steel and alien iron. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the tableau of inevitable violence. Ghaan'thak launched himself. He moved faster than biology should allow, a blur of muscle and rage. Dean fired the shotgun. Boom. But the buckshot merely sparked off the Yautja's shoulder plate. Ghaan'thak didn't even slow down. He slapped the weapon from Dean's hands with enough force to bend the barrel, then backhanded the hunter across the jaw. Dean spun in the air, crashing hard onto the wet concrete, blood spraying from his mouth. "Dean!" Sam screamed, lunging with a demon-killing knife. Ghaan'thak anticipated the move. He didn't turn. He simply lashed out with his leg, catching Sam in the chest. The impact sounded like a car door slamming. Sam flew backward, skidding across the roof until he hit the base of the ventilation unit, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The predator stood supreme. He clicked his mandibles, the sound wet and mocking in the rain. He looked at Dean, who was trying to crawl toward the angel blade lying 3 feet away. Ghaan'thak stepped on Dean's hand. Dean shouted in agony as the heavy boot ground his fingers against the stone. The Yautja crouched, grabbing Dean by the throat. He lifted the human effortlessly into the air, feet dangling a foot off the ground. Ghaan'thak brought his face close to Dean's, his yellow eyes narrowing. He extended his right wrist blades, long, serrated, hungry. He wasn't going to make it quick. He was going to take the skull, while the heart was still beating. Dean choked, clawing uselessly at the alien's armored gauntlet. His vision was graying out. This is it, Dean thought. Game over. But Ghaan'thak had made a hunter's error. He had forgotten the wounded packmate. Sam Winchester, ribs cracked and vision swimming, saw the discarded net gun lying in a puddle near the vent. It was empty. Ghaan'thak had fired the salt charge at the Duke, but it was heavy, solid steel. Sam didn't try to stand. He scrambled on hands and knees, grabbed the launcher, and with a desperate, guttural roar, hurled it like a hammer thrower. It was a Hail Mary, a 1 in a million shot through the rain and the dark. The heavy steel mechanism spiraled through the air and struck Ghaan'thak squarely in the back of the knee, right where the armor plating had a joint gap. The joint buckled. Ghaan'thak roared, his leg collapsing under his massive weight. He stumbled backward, his grip on Dean's throat loosening just enough. Dean didn't waste the oxygen on a breath. He used the drop. As Ghaan'thak's grip faltered, Dean drove his knee up, burying it in the Yautja's groin, and grabbed the alien's dreadlocks with both hands. "Have a nice trip." Dean wheezed. He threw his entire body weight forward. Ghaan'thak flailed, his boots scrabbling for purchase on the rain-slicked concrete. But he was off balance, heavy and reeling from the knee strike. He slammed backward into the safety railing. The railing, already weakened and twisted from Vorathael's telekinetic assault minutes earlier, groaned. The metal sheared. Ghaan'thak's yellow eyes went wide. He reached out, his claws scraping sparks against the concrete edge, trying to find a hold. For a second, he hung there, suspended over the abyss of the silo's interior drop, 100 feet of darkness. Dean scrambled back, snatching the angel blade from the ground, ready to stab the fingers. But Ghaan'thak didn't beg. He looked at Dean. He clicked his mandibles once, a sound of grudging acknowledgement, and let go. He fell silently into the black. A second later, there was a dull, heavy thud from the bottom of the silo, followed by the clatter of loose debris. Dean collapsed against the broken railing, chest heaving, staring down into the dark. He spat a mouthful of blood over the edge. Sam limped over, clutching his ribs, his face pale. They waited. 10 seconds. 20. No roar. No movement. Did we get him? Sam rasped, leaning heavily on the wall. Dean peered into the gloom. The lightning flashed again, illuminating the bottom of the silo shaft. It was empty. There was a dent in the metal floor grating where the body should have been. A trail of glowing green blood led toward a drainage grate that fed into the town's sewer system. Dean let out a long, pained breath and holstered the angel blade. He wiped the rain from his face, looking out at the storm-battered horizon. "No," Dean said, his voice grim. "He's gone." He looked back at the green bloodstain. "For now." Sam nodded, too tired to argue. He moved to help the angel up. "Let's get out of here before he finds a medkit." Dean took one last look at the dark shaft. Somewhere down there, in the tunnels, the predator was tending its wounds. It was alive. It was learning. Yeah, Dean muttered, turning to the fire escape. Driver picks the music. Shotgun shuts his cake hole. Sam replied automatically, though there was no humor in it tonight. They disappeared down the ladder, leaving the silo to the storm and the things that hunted in it.